Okay, all jokes aside, this is Bladeology podcast brought to you by LSD Incorporated, hosted by Nick Chuprin of NCC Knives.
Elijah Isham of Isham Bladeworks.
Jeremiah Burbank of PVK Vegas.
So our motivation behind this podcast was just to get some vocal presence in the community. Me and Jeremiah have been talking about this for the last 6 months, and then our drive to Kentucky a few weeks ago with Elijah. He was also interested in doing a podcast, so that's how it became 3. Our plan for this podcast is to talk about what other makers, about how they started and why they went full time and their stories behind knife making. There's plenty of makers out there, and it's a little bit different than what people are doing now. We don't really want to talk about the current knives that are being made in the production community and the history of knives. We just mainly want to interview other knife makers who are stuck in their shop like most of us are and don't really get to talk out about what they do and how they do their things.
Yeah, I think I can echo that. A lot of what we do, respectively, as makers, designers, and dealers, is spend a great deal of time either at a computer or in our shop, and it can be very lonely. So a lot of times you put on a podcast or you call your friends, and your friends happen to be either makers, designers, or dealers, and at the end of the day, it's a 6-hour conversation once a day talking about knives, talking about the community, talking about upcoming shows, talking about whatever, everything and anything having to do with knives. And at that point, you're like, well, shoot, we should just have a podcast because I think the things that we talk about are interesting and we should share it with everybody. I don't know, Elijah, where do you stand on that?
Yeah, I feel the same. I mean, sitting in front of a computer, hours on end every day can get pretty lonely. It's a very, very isolated existence, I suppose. And yeah,
we have
feel like we could have a good perspective on the industry with 3 different viewpoints. Designer, maker, and dealer. So pretty excited.
So, like I said, I was trying to get into this for a while now because my company is known as NCC Knives and not Nick Chuprin Custom Knives like most people. So people know me and what I do. I think the biggest surprise people get from me is they don't realize how old I am. Well, I guess how young I am. So I want to get more of a local presence and more of who I am and what it is. A lot of people think I'm a big company. I'm just one guy with a part-time worker, hopefully being full-time soon. This will let me talk about what I do and how I did it. I've been full-time for 4 years and in this industry since I was 13 years old. So I've been in this industry for almost 10 years. So I'll be talking about that eventually. After these, we will be doing individual interview episodes for each one of us. Jeremiah will be talking about PVK Vegas because he's been in it for a really long time. When did you join PVK Vegas?
So I joined the company pretty much full-time end of 2009, 2010. But I've been, obviously, it is a family company, so I've been in and out of it for, I don't know, my whole life, on and off doing stuff with knives, but really full-time in 2010. So I remember a time before social media. A lot of my early memories in this company are definitely just talking to more old school makers. So I'm definitely excited to jump in on this and get some guys on here that can talk to all these new kids about all that good old stuff.
The time before IG.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
The dark days of the forums. No, the forums were great. It was a very different experience. Like all 3 of us have been long enough to know the forums before Instagram. The moment we hit Instagram, well, the community itself hit Instagram, it just became a different place. All these other markets and communities started to kind of into almost like a melting pot. Everything just started to merge. The material, it also changed the knives makers made because we started using different materials from other industries. For example, Damascus that was made by Alpha Knife Supply years ago. It was made for the knife community, but nowadays you see it in all sorts of communities, like flashlights, watches, fidget toys, whatever, anything where metals could be used and modified to use Damascus for. Same thing for a knife community. We're using stuff called, I think, Dynawood or something like that. Essentially, like the stabilized woods that you see that have all their voids filled in with like colored acrylics. I don't think that's started in that community. I'm pretty sure it's not. You see that a lot in woodworking, but it looks great in a lot of fixed blades.
Like impregnated woods?
No, impregnated woods are just stabilized woods where wood is injected with resin to make it a stable material. Mm-hmm. But like a lot of times you'll see like end cuts where it's like you see the edge of the wood and they'll put that into a mold and put acrylic in the mold to fill it into one block. So you'll have this piece of nice stabilized wood that's solid and stabilizer resin, and then the other half, the piece of wood, will be like colorful acrylics. Like you ever see on Instagram those videos where guys will take 2 pieces of wood and carve a channel into it and fill it with colored resin, and you make
you see it in like carpenters do those time lapse videos and then making tables out of it and stuff.
Yeah, that's exactly it, except small pieces.
Yeah, like you see a lot of that material they use like glow in the dark stuff and fill it with wood and then use it on fixed plates.
Yep. Yeah, you don't really see on folders. Like natural woods on folders are a pain in the ass. Like they might look fine now, and then like a month later, because it's drying consistently, and it takes a while for it to really dry. It just the pieces might warp. What are your motivations behind the podcast, Elijah?
So yeah, like I agree. I mean, I was kind of ripped into this as a third party a little bit. It started as just Nick and Jeremiah, but I feel like I can offer some perspective on design philosophy and things such as that to the mix. So it should be pretty interesting. I have a lot of ideas about design and principles of knife making that I feel are kind of my own. So,
like your famously designed Pleroma,
exactly,
and your story behind the curves of a woman.
Well, that one's unto itself. That one was the first design I did mathematically, so that's its own beast.
No, I think it'll be. I think this podcast will be interesting for multiple reasons, obviously. But I think that the three of us having different perspectives, different show prep, pre and post prep, will be beneficial to share with everybody in the community. You know, anybody who is looking to get on and listen to this awesome podcast. Speaking of which, we're gonna try to do a pretty regular content. So we're gonna try to do monthly maker interviews where we get some of our friends and some of our fellow
peers.
Makers. Yeah, peers, exactly.
And show recap too, because
well, we'll get there.
Me and Jeremiah have been to practically every show this year except for 2.
Yeah, I've been to all of them too, except the 2 that were like back to back, Cali and Oregon. That was stupid.
Those were 2 of the best ones. At least the Portland show.
Yeah, but it was just like
Blade Show West was great this year. I mean, first year in I think probably 8 years of hiatus, so we'll see how it goes from there.
It was just another week apart. It was USN, and a week and 5 days later it was Oregon, and like a week after that was Cali. It's like
you got to keep up, man. You got to just keep.
I mean, that's that road dog mentality.
Yeah,
you're in it to win it.
All the way.
Well, for you guys, Elijah, you just attend, and Jeremiah, it's great for him because he has to buy more things. But for a maker, it's like, God, give me a moment to breathe.
Another great example of our perspectives on the industry as it's, as it is right now. That's
you got to get your face out there, man. You can't just sit at home sometimes. Like yes. I just basically sit at home and just design knives, come up with an idea, or just get into a flow state and just go at it. And I'd rather, do that and correlate time to take to shows. Like this year, I wanted to really, get out there and show my face and put a name with the face. Face with the name.
You gotta show off that wonderful handlebar mustache, man.
Yeah,
it's true.
You gotta get out there and meet the people, meet the customers, see what their ideas on things are.
Especially with so many shows this past year, almost 10 or 11 by my count.
We've about 10 or 12.
Yeah, we've been to almost all of them except for a couple. So we're gonna definitely have a bit to talk about. Obviously, we're recording this in December, so our next show we're all going to together would be SHOT Show TKI and the Las Vegas show.
Yeah, the 3-peat.
Yeah, so we're probably going to try to do as many pre-show shows and post-show shows as possible.
I don't know how we prep for shows because, like, I'm a maker, and as most people know, makers don't really sleep before shows. Whatever Elijah does before a show and whatever Jeremiah does before a show, to prep for shows.
My show prep is pretty minuscule. I usually try and figure out which meetings I might have to have for collaboration projects or what someone might want to see with a design moving forward. So it's definitely completely different than a maker.
Yeah, heavily hydrate and prep for drinking. That's kind of all three. That's kind of all 3 of us prep.
Yeah, pack my suitcase. Yeah.
Pack some Tums, pack some PDLA.
It's like a Tums festival.
The drinking essentials.
Tums fest, essentially, yeah. A little bit of antacid in there to spice it up just a little bit. But I mean, ideally, we'll have monthly, bi-monthly shows. You know, if there's a show that month, we're gonna have a recap and a pre-show, and then we'll try to do little mini episodes or mini-sodes. We're gonna try to do the what's in the shop kind of thing, and that'll be what Nick's working on, or what Elijah's working on, or what I'm working on for the shop, and we can all sort of chime in, and that's really just to keep it regular. I would ideally like to have as much content as possible.
Yeah, the goal is 2 episodes a month, and maybe once we get more into it, we're gonna do at least 1 interview episode a month where we're gonna have 4 people on the show. The mini, those are probably about an hour and a half to 2 hours, because knife makers have a lot to talk about usually. Those mini what's in the shop episodes are probably about 45 minutes, or 50 minutes or so, the intro, and then get about 20 minutes. I'll talk about what I'm working on that week, what Elijah's designing, and maybe some new stuff, because Jeremiah gets new inventory all the time, maybe some new stuff or specials they have going on that month. As far as the recap shows, like I mentioned, we'll do a little short one too, maybe about a 30-minute episode, 25-minute episode before the show. And then a longer one after the show, because lots of stuff goes down after the shows, maybe an hour or so.
That's where the good stuff goes down at the show. And then the recap after the show should be pretty spicy. And
like we mentioned, the shows are kind of like, when I say I'm going for shows, it's a business meeting or it's a workation. It's the shows are they're working, but it's the only time I go on vacations really. So it's like 60-40. You work from 8 o'clock to about 4, and then from 4 to 4 a.m. it's just straight fuckery. Like I said, most of these knife makers are in their shops all day, so it's nice to get out.
Definitely mixing business with pleasure. I mean, there's a lot of networking going on at a show. You have to shake a lot of hands and introduce yourself and so forth, and then tons of meetings usually with company heads and project leads of stuff.
It's so much going on, and it can be very intense during the show and after the show, and it is sort of like mixing business and pleasure, which sometimes is the best. When you can blend those and do work and have a good time. After all, it is about the people, not the knives.
So we're getting about 51 minutes into this, so I think we should just close it out by saying we also have the Bladeology podcast. Instagram is set up, as well as the bladeology@gmail.com is the email. We're going to make a post just introducing the first episode, but also what would be great from you guys to give us more content and more things to talk about. If you guys just comment on any of the posts saying episodes you guys would want to see, maybe talking about knife making materials and what it goes into designing a knife, where do we start, alongside we want to make a list of general questions we could ask every knife maker. We have some sort of list made up, like a Q&A. Every maker has different questions that go on to them. So before a maker episode, we are going to post up about a week in advance, a couple days in advance, to let you guys know who's going to be on the podcast, so you guys can ask them specific questions. But if you guys have any good ideas for content or general questions you could ask any maker, please let us know in any of the posts on our Instagram.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you have any questions for us personally, feel free to reach out. I know we're planning on having full episodes dedicated to each one of the hosts, which we'll probably be getting to ASAP.
And before that, I just wanted to mention that we are sponsored by LST Incorporated.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Thank you to LST Inc. It's everything you need whenever you need it all the time. Thanks so much, guys. Jeremiah out.
Elijah out.
Nick out.
Good job.
You're gonna edit that. You're gonna edit this.
He's not even in the call. Are you in the call, motherfucker? Jesus Christ, man!
I keep